Samsung, proud sponsor of Tech Busters.
Well, ICASA have been holding these hearings that will really determine the Electronic Communications Act, and they've been hearing these submissions from various providers that are involved in the communications industry, and one of them is Dimension Data and, of course, Internet Solution, a whole group of companies that represent and have a really big say in this act and if the act is going to be passed and how it will be passed. Siyabonga Madyibi is Head of Regulatory Affairs in Internet Solutions and Dimension Data. How big and how important is this act for South Africans as a whole, Siyabonga?
It is very important. Maybe if I could just give a brief context to it. The last time in South Africa the telecommunications legislation was overhauled was in 1996.
Yes.
And the last time a new legislation was introduced was in 2006. Now, if you think about that and you think about today, this is 7 years later. So what you're effectively having now is 7 years later, you're having for the first time in this country a situation where you are looking at recommendations around what changes should be made in the legislation to make the market more effective going forward.
So are you saying that organizations like yourselves, like Dimension Data, Internet Solutions, are you saying that not much has happened in the 7 years and the legislation hasn't given you guys too much room to improve and you're kind of hamstrung going forward? Not
much at all. You will well understand that especially in an environment like telecommunications, there are a lot of dynamics that happen far more quicker.
Yes.
I mean, technology is one of the quickest things that are changing in any market.
Yes.
And if you think about the fact that the last time the legislation was reviewed was in 2006, and literally from then on up until now, there has been no interaction at that level at all. So the market has moved quite forward, and that has led to the situation where the dominant incumbent operators have become more dominant, and the new entrants have been given no space whatsoever to try and acquire market share. And as a result, government has sought to try and open up the market by having this round of interaction. Because
a few years ago, you were quite involved in the local loop unbundling. What has happened since then? Have you got what you wanted by ICASA?
100%. We were involved in that process. The whole country was calling for that. Unfortunately, the whole country is still calling for that, because what has since happened is that ICASA issued regulations, but those regulations were never actually finalized, and as a result, were never actually implemented. So local loop unbundling only exists in paper in South Africa. It is not anything that has been implemented.
So what do you want to happen? What is the ideal situation that Dimension Data and your group as a whole that you're representing, what do you want to see? What is your ideal result that you want?
Well, we want certain decisive changes or interventions to be made in the market to level the playing field so that all new entrants and all players can compete on an equal footing. We want access to spectrum, for one. We want wholesale access to the network for mobile operators. We want the landscape to be changed in the sense that there must be infrastructure sharing, which will enable us to roll out our networks more dynamically and more effectively. So effectively, we want an arrangement where government creates space where there's effective competition in the market so that new entrants can be given an equal footing to compete with incumbent operators who have been operating from day one.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you're saying ICASA's got no teeth.
Well, ICASA unfortunately has not done what it is supposed to have done. South Africa remains one of those markets that are only liberalized in terms of having about 60 or 70 licenses in the market. But in terms of opening up space for new entrants to be able to compete on actual equal footing with the incumbent players, ICASA has done very little in relation to that.
Do you think that if government and the Department of Communications specifically does not act fast enough, that it could have a negative impact on the economic growth of this country?
It already does, because South Africa, for instance, compared to its peer countries, has fallen behind in terms of penetration of broadband and telecommunication services amongst the communities. If you look at South Africa, it's typically a reflection of rich and poor, where telecommunication services are available in urban areas, and there's very little penetration in rural areas. And even in those urban areas where there is penetration, the affordability has become an issue. And that is precisely because you only have a few operators that are operating, and they're not really opening themselves up to any real competition, because they both benefit from the closed environment that we have. So government has a responsibility to create an environment where there can be effective competition, where consumers will have choice, and that choice will force real competition that can bring down prices.
Well, the new minister seems like he's a no-nonsense minister. Are you confident in the new minister's role, that he's made a lot of promises?
Well, he's been very pragmatic, but he's also indicated that he only has about 8 months up until April. And in this industry, you can only do so much within 8 months. Our hope and our expectation is that, given the approach, the energetic approach he has shown so far, that he will be given a chance to continue with his role even beyond beyond elections.
Yeah.
It would really be a shame because we already have 4 ministers to manage this portfolio in the last couple of years. So it would be really a shame if you were to
You've
be
been in the
changed.
business a long time, Siyabonga Madyibi. What does your gut feel tell you? Where is this going to go?
Well, my
you
gut,
confident?
my gut feel is that government wants to do something.
Yes.
Whether they're going to make the right interventions, that remains to be seen. But what is encouraging is that clearly government wants to do something. There is an acknowledgement that the prices are far higher than where they should be, that communications in South Africa has not gone down to the levels where it's supposed to be. So there is a need to do something. But what we're trying to ensure is that government does the right things that will open up the market.
Siyabonga, you don't sound 100% confident. I hope it goes your way, and I hope that the government sees them. Thank you for joining us on Tech Busters.
Thank you.
Interesting stuff, Siyabonga Madyibi, telling us about where they find themselves as a business, hamstrung, and the impact that it could have to the economy unless government doesn't free up more spectrum and take communications more seriously.